Shooting the monastery of St. Simeon was a total success. It produced some of the most powerful, beautiful images in the entire movie.
And that's another one where Brad insisted on getting the second unit up early, so that everybody could be on their camels as the sun came up. And we got this spectacular shot of the camel's shadows.
It's really a gorgeous, gorgeous shot. We knew that it was a AAA+ shot when we did it. It's just one of those shots that you do and you just know you created a little magic right then.
Go, Jordy!
One of the pleasures of working with Jordy is that he had so much experience in this part of Africa and so much knowledge about the culture and history of Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia as well. He kept pushing and pushing for us to get permission to take lights into the inside of tombs where they hadn't been before. And eventually, the Egyptian officials agreed. I thought that every day, when we bring these giant 18K lights into Abu Simbel, they're just going to see this light and they're going to say, get out of here, you know, take off. But I just didn't think they'd ever let us get away with it, but they did. And as a result, we were able to do and photograph things that hadn't been done before inside Abu Simbel, inside Nefertari, all these incredibly preserved tombs that people are rarely involved in, allowed inside it.
When the crew comes back from location, they come back with many, many hours of footage, and you could make many different movies out of that footage. And so my job is to figure out, well, which one movie are we going to make?
When we finish the movie, we may be at 45 versions. The story will be better told, the characterizations will be stronger, the emotional context of the movie will be much more impactful. The action scenes will be pretty much the same, but it's the subtle storytelling that will be changed from version to version.
The point wasn't so much to take full advantage of the spectacular format, but rather to make a movie that would transport you, make you feel the emotion. That's what we were aiming for.
The film turned out far better than I ever expected it to. I knew that it was going to be a good movie, but I didn't know it was going to be this good.
I think that from the very start, our aim for the movie was to strike the right balance between the human adventure involved in our expedition and everything the adventure implied in terms of discovering the culture, the society, the history along the entire Blue Nile.
Coming up with the cast of characters on this film was a difficult job because Jordy and I wanted a range of characters, women and men, people from around the world. Fortunately, we were able to come up with people who had a certain ability to act well in front of the camera, to be good role models for our audience members, particularly children who come see this film.
They sent us some pictures from the United States of this guy paddling a kayak. You could see him from the back, this big, strong guy, and they said, this guy could be really good for our movie. And I said, gee, I don't know.
I interviewed him and talked to him on the phone, and then I met with him. And I thought instantly, this is the guy. He could be the leadership character for the movie.
We are 26.2 kilometers. We're crossing what's called the Guguri River.
To me, leading expeditions in parts of the world, you know, that are just exciting with new, strange cultures, with wild landscapes, with some adventure, a little bit of danger, to me is the ultimate lifestyle.
I felt that it was needed to have a character who was in a kayak, who was independent of the two rafts, who could go off and explore other regions, and also who could be part of the excitement of the film.
My job as a kayaker is to scout and run things first, find the line so that the rafts don't get into trouble, because the rafts are big, 16 foot, and they're not very maneuverable. They don't get into places and out of them very quickly. Where I really had to focus on the fact that I was going to be kayaking and that we had an IMAX camera and I was going to have to be shooting that IMAX camera. And I didn't have a support team. I didn't have 4 or 5 people to get the camera into place and load the mags. I had to do that all myself.
I knew the trip was going to be pretty tough physically because we'd be getting up really early, going on long hikes, rowing down the Nile. I knew it wasn't going to be easy.
Saskia was well polished as a journalist. You know, she was a joy to have on the expedition. We got along very well. In fact, we had this little joke going amongst us that we were on a honeymoon.
Here I am with Pasquale again.
Our honeymoon.
On our honeymoon. Where are we, Pasquale?
We are in beautiful Lake Nasser. We own this. I bought this for Saskia.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm renaming this Lake Saskia.
Yeah?
Entre Pasquale y Saskia.
Pasquale and Saskia hit it off in a wonderful way from the very start, because Pasquale is the kind of person who places himself in a leadership role. He's the protective father, and Saskia is the kind of person who's eager to learn.
Yeah, Pasquale's a bit of a god. To me, he's been someone with a lot of experience. He really knows what he's doing. He was human, because there he was, sitting in the raft, but he was also like an eagle. He could see far away. He could hear. He was like an Indian who could smell what was going to happen, where the animals were coming from, and when the river was getting dangerous.
There's no doubt in my mind that Pasquale had an enormous responsibility on his shoulders, and he felt it. It weighed him down. The fact is that we were in quite a few rough situations, extreme situations. We couldn't afford to have anything go wrong because we were in the middle of nowhere, virtually out of touch with the outside world, so any health problem or accident would have been hard to deal with.
And then somehow it happens, and you get there, you make the movie, and nobody gets hurt too badly. Pasquale got hurt a little bit.
I thought I was going to pass out when that happened because he was cutting on my leg. And I could feel the knife. You know, it's one of those things where I could feel the knife go on my leg, and he's going, I'm going, oh my God.
No, Pasquale doesn't exaggerate.
It was terrible.
This fish was at least this big.
When I went back, people didn't believe it. They thought I was exaggerating on this clinic.
Mike says, hey, you got to go to the doctor. And Miriam goes, hey, I know this great hospital. It's one of the best hospitals outside Cairo. It's called the German Clinic.
Oh, baby. Go ahead.
Oh, God.
So when Pasquale went into that hospital, it was like, uh-oh. And it was funny because so many times it's like, you know, clear the room out, the doctor needs the space to work. Well, this was like, well, what should we do here? You know, so it's just, you know, it's very all-inclusive.
Well, it was not a German clinic. It was a mission that had been started by the Germans, who knows how many years ago.
This experience with Mystery of the Nile has been my first experience in front of a camera. I'm used to being on one side of the camera, and suddenly there I was on the other.
At the beginning of the shoot, I wondered, what's this guy doing? He's always taking pictures in the middle of the shoot. Can't he sit still? He just keeps on taking pictures, crossing in front of the camera.
I think Michel, who is sort of the hidden character, was a real surprise. He's from Chile, and he's a still photographer by trade. He does wonderful, wonderful work with stills.
To be honest, there were many times when I would have said, look, I'm taking a car or walking. I'll meet up with you again in a few days. I would have liked to stay with some of these people in their villages, as I've done in other places in the world.
I think the main reason Michel left Khartoum was just tired. I think he'd been on the river a long time, He wanted to get back to Spain, and so he decided to leave the expedition at that point in time, which left Gordon and I to do the bottom part of it.
¿Qué hemos hecho hoy? Cuéntame. Bueno, pues. Cuéntame.
Miriam was wonderful. Miriam Seiko was, she just had a spirit of adventure. She was the one other person that could have easily done the whole trip.
Or you have to cover it, or you just know two ways about it.
It's raining. The rain is so dirty.
Oh. So 1 year of this pollution is like 100 years, 1,000 years ago.
One of the biggest mistakes I made as an expedition leader is not making Miriam stay on the expedition for every mile of the way. Because I thought of all the people on the expedition that Miriam Seiko had the ability to complete this expedition, 100%.
We learned about Mohammed as a hydrologist, the leading hydrologist in Egypt, and he was interested in going down the river.
Mohammed Megahed is a scientist. He works in a lab. He never leaves his lab except when he goes to collect samples from the Nile in Egypt.
Mohammed has been the biggest surprise for me on this trip because I'd never met anyone whose personality could completely change in 2 weeks. Mohammed started off this trip during Ramadan. He wouldn't drink or eat until 6 in the afternoon.
To be in the middle of Ramadan and not eat or drink all day long under the blazing sun is enough to get anyone dizzy.
In my side. And my name is? Saskia. Saskia.
There were a few girls there, and one of them, who's in the movie, had a look in her eyes that was like the look of a much older person, like an old woman's gaze. It was wonderful to shoot with that girl, and when we said goodbye, it was very moving, because deep down I knew I would never see her again.
The old saying that when you've been in the Nile will be inside of you forever is true as anything. I've done a lot of things. I mean, I've climbed mountains, been on Mount Everest, been on lots of rivers, but I've never been on a river that becomes part of you more than the Nile.
Before we started writing the script, we spent several months doing in-depth research on all the subjects we were going to encounter along the Nile, from its source in Ethiopia all the way down to the sea.
In Santa Barbara, where my daughter's going to school, at the bookstore, they were offering books by the historians of the University of California. There was a book by Robert Collins about the Nile. And I picked it up, purchased it, and read it, and then we decided to use Robert Collins as our main academic advisor for the film.
I really couldn't turn it down. It's not every day that someone launches a long expedition from the sacred springs of Sakala, all 3,800 miles all the way to the Mediterranean.
Most people in the audience associate Egypt with the Nile. They aren't usually aware of what there is beyond.
Okay, this is what we do. We stay on the Gilgel Abai, but we go straight, okay?
And what I stressed was they should concentrate on the mysteries of the Nile at its beginnings in Ethiopia. And then through the Sudan, which is less known to the general public, and not concentrate so much on the monuments of Egypt, which everyone has almost seen.
Ethiopia is one of the countries with the oldest Christian tradition in the world, and we found the most beautiful churches I ever remember seeing in my life.
They're Christian churches that are a shock to most public members because most everyone feels that that region of the world is Islamic. Well, it's not, and this is a surprise to people.
Ethiopia is the third oldest Christian country in the world after Armenia. This was in the 4th century AD.
I insisted on shooting in Lalibela.